Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 15th session of the Bellingham City Council. The only announcement tonight is, as always, the Bellingham City Council meets all requirements of the State of Washington Open Meetings Act. And would Linda Liu lead us in the flag salute?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Terry Borneman.
Here.
Dan Hamill.
Here.
Jean Knudsen.
Here.
Michael Lillequist.
Here.
Roxanne Murphy.
Here.
Pinky Vargas.
Here.
Jack Weiss.
Here. Okay, we're going to start out with our presentation first. So I'm going to come down to the dais. And Linda, you want to come over here for a second? As many of you know, Linda has decided that she's had enough of us. She can't be here anymore, so she's going to retire. But no, it's been an honor and a pleasure for all the years that I've served with her. She's going to be sorely missed. So the council has a resolution that I'm going to read tonight, and then I'll open it up for the rest of the council. And we do have one ex-council member that wants to say a few words too, because he put her through a lot of grief while he was here too. So, okay, resolution honoring Linda Anderson. Whereas Linda Anderson has worked as city representative for the city of Bellingham for 13 years, and whereas Linda has been part of some marathon city council meetings running late into the next day, never losing her cool, and whereas Linda handles contracts, deeds, agenda bills, ordinances, and resolutions, keeping these archival documents secure and in order for prosperity, and whereas Linda has served as the Director of Operations for all Finance Department potlucks and barbecues, and whereas Linda has served as Secretary of the Police and Pension Fire Boards, and whereas Linda played a key role in implementing and refining the new SIRE agenda management software in 2014, overcoming many challenges while keeping a smile on her face the whole time. And whereas Linda Liu's knowledge and wit guided us through some tough nights over the years, making her a pleasure to work with. And whereas Linda has been kind and thoughtful and treated everyone as worthy of her time and attention. And whereas Linda has always handled her responsibilities with utmost respect and grace, instilling a positive work environment for all those around her. And Linda is a master of holding many threads together, as we hope that her retirement does not cause everything to unravel here at the city. Now for there be resolved by the City Council of the City of Bellingham that the Bellingham City Council hereby commends Linda Anderson for her professional and expresses the gratitude for her many contributions to the City of Bellingham. Be it further resolved that we wish Linda Anderson a relaxing retirement full of wonder and joy, health and prosperity, and lots of snuggles and giggles with her beloved grandchildren. I'll now entertain a motion for this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. And again, thank you for everything, Linda. It's been a pleasure to work with you. Elizabeth, start the timer, her 3 minutes. Take that.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Time.
Well, I think I can get through this. I haven't felt emotional all day, so we'll see how that does. When I first started here at the city, I barely knew the difference between an ordinance and a resolution. And the acronyms for everything were a foreign language. The first one I encountered was REIT. REIT what? What the heck is REIT? How do I spell it? What is it? In that moment, I didn't even know that it was an acronym. I thought all I could do is spell it phonetically and try to figure it out later. Thank God for the internet. I can't tell you how many things I've looked up and resolved the spelling, the correct name, or unraveled an acronym. REIT, by the way, for those of you who don't know, is real estate excise tax. Don't get me started on first quarter REIT. I thought first quarter reference was something to do with the calendar. Not sure I have that one yet, but I digress. Jean, Terry, Michael, Dan, Jack, Pinky, Roxanne, Stan in the audience, and all the prior council members, mayors, staff, committed citizens, and my 3 finance directors. It truly has been my pleasure to watch and learn how one person can make a difference. I've witnessed your joys and your sorrow. I've agreed and disagreed with your decisions, and always felt it a privilege to be part of this community at City Hall. I've been here 13 years and attended approximately 312 council meetings. That even shocked me. Really? This is Elizabeth's 2nd council meeting, so be patient and remember to say your yays and nays and motions and seconds clearly. Life is filled with wonder, and I try to make every day worthwhile. I'm surrounded by kind, caring, and thoughtful people, both at work and at home. And now, here I go. And now, in a few days, I'll move on to the next phase of my life. Time passes quickly. Years are rushing fast. Shoot, breathe. And I have 4 beautiful, each incredibly unique grandchildren, Barrett, Dahlia, Cooper, and Piper. They keep my hug-o-meter full, and I'll spend hopefully the next many years watching them grow into their amazing selves. Thank you for all you've brought into my life and allowing me the privilege of working with you.
Thank you, Linda.
I can never get too many hugs.
Stan, why don't you go ahead and come down, and then we'll have the council start after that.
I've written a 20-minute speech.
No.
You're going to limit us to 3 minutes, are you?
No, no.
All right.
3 minutes.
Did you leave any Kleenex up here? No, you didn't, did you? I just wondered if you left any Kleenex here. All right. I think I'll be all right. I know where to find it. I started a little differently on council than many because the seat was vacant when I was elected. So the day the election was certified, the next day they swore us in and we were on council. So I was here in November of 2007 for a term that was supposed to start in 08. So I got to vote on the budget that I didn't know much about and so on. But being a retired city employee, I thought I knew a lot about everything about the city. And you set me straight fairly soon and fairly often. One of the most memorable for me was when I got this brilliant idea that it didn't make sense to have 2 different people here supporting the council, one in the afternoon and one in the evening. And so it wasn't personal. To me, it was just academic. It just made sense to have the same person. And often I would see you up here in the afternoon getting ready for an evening because of something that was complicated and you wanted to follow it. You and Jay Lynn ripped me a new one, to be blunt. Oh my gosh. I didn't know that side of either one of you. I'd seen a little bit of it in Jay Lynn because we love to argue politics, but gosh, I went, oh my gosh, this must be terribly wrong. and I couldn't backpedal more quickly. And you couldn't have been more gracious about it than you were. And I tried to listen more and operate a little less with my change ideas. But I see they have laptops now and we're online and a lot of things that we didn't have a couple years ago. So anyway, I just wanted to thank you so much for 6 years and 2 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan.
Yeah.
Cheers for Linda! Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray!
Thank you, Robert. Okay, Michael.
Thank you, Gene. Linda, I just want to say to you and to everyone that professionalism and kindness can go together in the same person, and Linda shows that.
Dan.
Linda, we've only had the opportunity to work with each other for about 6 months. I wish it were longer. You've made me feel very welcome during this whole time. I really appreciate your service to our city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda, you contribute a lot of things, but two things especially for me that were very important is I was very nervous when I started and did not know very much about Robert's Rules of Conduct, and I was constantly looking to you what I should do, what my next step was, and you were always patient and reassuring, so thank you for that. And then another thing that I don't know if people realize, but every city council meeting, Linda puts chocolates at our desk. And I got to tell you that there are some late night meetings that Linda's chocolate is the thing that keeps me going. So I will miss you in many ways, but especially for your chocolate.
I'm going to miss Linda too because, you know, I used to go home and vent to my wife about what happened here at City Council, and she just started telling me I don't want to hear it, shut up. But Linda would listen to every single word and not say nothing, and I'm going to miss that, but seriously, it's been a pleasure to work with you over the years, and you're going to be sorely missed. Okay, thank you very much. Terry.
Yeah, I have to say, I am really going to miss you. You know, your ability to deal with so many different personalities that have set up over here over the years, and do it with smiling face and graciousness. You know, I'm going to really miss that. But if you get really bored at times and we have to read changes into bond ordinances, you're welcome to come. Did you tell her about that? Yes, you're welcome to come up and visit us. We're going to miss you, and enjoy your retirement. I know you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, Linda's had the opportunity to go and rattle off probably 24 different numbers, financial numbers that might be at least 12 digits each, and be able to do that with not very much of a hiccup at all. So that's great.
Yeah.
I have appreciated being your right-hand wingman. That has been fun over the years, and you've done a great job, and every once in a while we get to operate as a team, and I'll do that with Elizabeth at least for the rest of the year. But Linda, it's been a joy. It's been really fun, you know, being with you and being able to talk after the meeting, and while you've been putting, you know, another thing that Linda does too is that she'll go and put together what's called an agenda review at the end of the meeting, and sometimes she stays here for like another, you know, we might go on for 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, but she'll stay for until she's able to go and record exactly what happened in the meeting, and she'll be in here for, you know, maybe another hour and a half or so, you know, putting together the stuff so that the citizens will know what we did during the night. And it's that type of, you know, that type of commitment that it really sets you aside, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Roxanne.
Well, most people come to an afternoon session or an evening session, and usually they say, we're insane to keep coming back. I appreciate that you were sane enough to keep us on track. And also, the other thing that I really value is that we talk about so many different things during our council meetings, and we go in so many different directions. Linda is able to translate that into something that's digestible for our whole community to understand, of the motions, of the movements, of the words. And I just appreciated all the consistency that you provided to us with that excellent service, and I'm really going to miss you. Thank you.
Don't be a stranger, Linda. You can always watch on television or come back in person. Boy, she's going to listen to that, isn't she? Huh? Okay. Okay, we'll now go to our 15-minute public comment period. We've got quite a few people tonight, so we're really going to... We're really going to try to keep it as 3 minutes if you possibly can. The first three names are Tom Scott, Ray Barbo, and Lisa Sherry.
Good afternoon. I am Tom Scott, 1445 Grant Street, York Neighborhood Association Vice President. I'm speaking on behalf of the York Neighborhood Association Board of Directors. At the June 1st council meeting, the York Neighborhood Association, or YNA, introduced the topic of a controversial 3-lot demolition and construction project in the York National Historic District. Subsequently, the request to demolish the historic house in the middle has been withdrawn, stopping the SEPA review process. However, the controversy about the new construction of 2 7-bedroom houses is still a concern. While the permits are for 5-bedroom single-family houses, the owners have advertised the proposed houses on Craigslist as 7 bedrooms, each at $500 a month, for a total of $3,500 per house, and requiring each renter to pay their own $250 deposit. This appears to be rooming houses, which are illegal in single-family zone neighborhoods. At your last meeting, we asked the council to investigate the project, and we initiated a petition campaign, which is here, or some of it to date anyway. Pardon me. Sorry. We initiated additionally requesting the council to, quote, provide direction to the planning department as to appropriate infill for this property located in a single-family zoned and national historic district, and direct the planning department to begin work on development of design guidelines for new construction in residential historic districts, unquote. Tonight I submit the aforementioned petition. To date has roughly 250 signatures, which is composed of people from several neighborhoods, including 100 signatures from the Seahome neighborhood. We think this shows strong support for moving forward on developing design guidelines for single-family houses in historic neighborhoods. We also think that it especially shows concern for an apparent emerging pattern of skirting or openly violating the zoning for single-family neighborhoods. To the latter point, additional evidence has come to light indicating a pattern of possible violations by the same owner. On June 10th, the YNA sent you evidence of a second example of new construction in York's single-family zone neighborhood of a 5-bedroom, 2-rec room house that is also advertised on Craigslist as 7 bedrooms, looking for groups to apply. We sent you a copy of that and photos of the property at 1215 Humboldt Street, which is outside the historic district but is still in a single-family zone. We ask again that the council investigate to 1, what oversight from planning is being provided, 2, how will single-family zoning be protected and enforced, and 3, we urge you to move forward with requesting planning department to develop design guidelines for new construction in single-family neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Go ahead, sir. Sorry. Oh, him next.
Hi, good evening. Ray Baribeau, 4511 Glen Meadows Place, former member of the Jail Planning Task Force. I wish to address 2 issues tonight: the need for an interlocal agreement between the county and city regarding the Safe New Jail project, and also policing. The big issue right now is getting that project continuing to move forward. And a lot of the people that object to the new jail project really are dissatisfied with the criminal justice system. But the jail's an easy thing to point at. A lot of these people that object to the jail live in the city of Bellingham. They are your residents. So I've been a problem solver all my life, and I've been thinking about this, and I would like to suggest to the city of Bellingham that they allow their police department to take a 3-day weekend off. 6 o'clock Friday, they hit the road, they go camping, fishing, take their family somewhere, and come back at midnight on Monday. Nobody will be arrested. We won't be putting improper people in jail. The citizens of Bellingham will then get to see what it's like not to put people in jail. It would be a wonderful experiment, and then on Tuesday, people could come together to analyze the results of the experiment. I encourage you to think about that. Thank you very much.
Lisa Sherry.
My name is Lisa Sherry. I live at 917 West Pacific View Drive. I thank you for allowing me to come and speak to you. I appreciate living in a country and a community where citizens' voices are allowed to be heard. It means a lot to me. I'm concerned about the long process, the many years it has taken for the new jail to be decided upon. Many steps have been taken, many committees have examined the pros, the cons, the architectural, the facility itself, its impact on the neighborhood. I cannot imagine a project that has been more scrutinized. My concern is, I think so often we think about things in the abstract and we lose sight of the actual human being. The people who are being put in jail, being put into cells meant for two, and are asked now to share it with 4 or 5 others. I've seen photographs of it. It looks horrendous. God forbid I should ever find myself on the wrong side of the law and being thrown into such a jail, but one never can eliminate such a possibility. So my concern is that now we are coming up on a deadline where the Whatcom County Council can put it on the November ballot. And I don't know what happened, of course. I understand you met today in the afternoon. So what I am saying may be totally redundant. You may already have come to some very fine conclusions. But I urge you to take the measure seriously under consideration and not delay whatever decision that you must make in order to move this forward and have it put on the November ballot where the citizens can vote it up or down. This is the American way. I feel very, very great compassion for the people, though they have broken the law and are on the outside of society, are forced to live in such conditions as the Whatcom County Jail currently represents. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much. Is it Joan Doerr? Joan Dow. Dow, I'm sorry.
Joan Dow, 5491 Woodfern Way, Bellingham. Governments have a constitutional obligation to provide for the safety of their citizens. Our current jail is not safe. These are our friends, our neighbors, our nephews, cousins that are in this jail temporarily, and we have an obligation to keep them safe. I'm sure you know that in the event of a fire or some catastrophic event, horrific lawsuits will arise and could bankrupt all of us. I hope you will support the interlocal agreement that will help with the construction of a new jail. Thank you.
Thank you. The next 3 names are James, Jeff Howes, and Joseph McDonald.
Honorable Mayor, respected council members, ladies and gentlemen, my name is James, and I would like to speak about the systemic contributions to homelessness. I'm a citizen of Bellingham, Whatcom County, a registered voter, a taxpayer, a homeless combat veteran with nearly 15 years of experience in or with the homeless community. I have currently been in some form of homelessness since May 1st, 2010. The issue I wish to educate City Council and the public about is the systemic contributions to homelessness. The neighborhood I currently live in is any safe place that I could find a camp in Bellingham or Whatcom County. The core value which drives me to speak to how the system contributes to homelessness is objectivity. That and the fact that the system-sponsored film Homeless in Bellingham film project is thus far ignoring and glossing over the systemic contributions to homelessness in Bellingham and Whatcom County. The background and context that guides this value in relation to the issue is in a May 30th, 2015 article appearing in the News Tribune on the subject of the Homeless in Bellingham film project, where the director of the Whatcom Homeless Service Center at the Opportunity Council is quoted as saying, "We set out to make something that was as honest as possible. There is no film project that is honest as possible if it excludes the systemic contributions to homelessness that systems like local governments make. In addition to being the director of the Whatcom Homeless Service Center at the Opportunity Council, the article also states that the gentleman is the executive producer of the Homeless in Bellingham film project. The specific issue is that in Bellingham, Whatcom County, there is a severe system
Time.
induced shortage of safe, clean, affordable housing. To be continued.
Thank you,
very
sir.
much for your time.
Jeff Howes?
Greetings, everyone. I'm Jeff Howes. I have been a citizen of Bellingham.
Get closer to the microphone, sir.
I'm
So
Jeff Howes.
there we
I've been
go.
a citizen of Bellingham for coming up to 6 years. I live at 108 North 34th Street in the Seaholm neighborhood. And I'm here to speak about the brouhaha on Iron Street in the York District. It's come to my attention that existing laws may have gone unenforced, and I would be very grateful for the powers that be, including yourselves and the people who work in these various departments, including building and zoning, enforce existing law. And if there aren't existing laws, I urge you to correct the situation. I thank you very much for the work that you're doing. It seems to me to be challenging, and I'm grateful for the efforts that you make. And Linda, I'm very grateful for your efforts, and thank you for the glass of water that you gave me. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Joseph McDonald, Carol Sleznick, and Tim Hostetler.
Hi, my name is Joseph McDonald. You know I have a speech impediment, and I'm here to talk about animal control. I've done everything to promote animal control starting a bug control, except asking a lawyer to write the Mary letter and asking a human rights group to advocate for me. In the past, when I complained before, with the exception of Roxanne Murphy, City Council didn't seem too concerned with my human rights. I made it very clear to you that I chase away dogs with a horn. Although this is the most humane way to deal with a uncontrolled dog, owners don't like it. I've also made it very clear to you, situations like this can become violent. Why should I suffer anyone's anger for their own neglect and irresponsibility? I think not wanting animal control to have a bug control is very dysfunctional and cynical of you, causing undue stress and mental anguish for me. I think it's a shame that you rather see me up here complaining about the city's problems than doing anything to solve them. If there is a confrontation with me and the owner, and I end up on top, which will be deadly for my opponent, I don't want to explain to police that I fully informed the city of situations like this. I'm not quite sure if you got that. Let me repeat myself. If there is a confrontation with me and the owner, and I end up on top, which will be deadly for my opponent, I don't want to explain to police that I fully informed the city of situations like this. When I describe my self-defense strategies to police, they say, I don't want to see you get into trouble. It's like all of a sudden I become the bad guy because I want to protect myself. It's not like City Council is helpful in encouraging animal control and starting a bucket patrol. If it wasn't for the self-defense issue, I'd leave animal control and City Council alone. And all I'm asking is animal control to do their job and City Council to make them do their job. I see on-leash dogs every day. I can't always tell if they're going to be friend or foe. Their owner doesn't care how they behave. For my safety, the owner's safety, and the dogs still get air dumps, please encourage animal control to start a buck patrol, or should I repeat this speech again? Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Go ahead, Matt. You. Yes.
My name is Carol Slesnick, and I've been a resident for 30 years. I live at 500 North State Street. I've attended both recent council meetings, and a minority of both councils, City of Bellingham and the county, don't want the councils to get together on the jail. They state their reason as being 14 people in a room together would probably just get off course. But I suggest that we are already off course, and that is the problem. Whatcom County needs to bring important concepts together. Everyone wants a safe jail. Many people also see that Whatcom County needs a reasonable and tested alternative to jail for about half of the inmates. The councils are made up of good, elected people who know the best interests of our county, and they should be able to proceed with a workable plan. Vested interests may need to compromise. We need a jail plan that the voters can endorse. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Hostetler, Sandra Randall, and Robert Burr. Go ahead, Tim.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment. My name's Tim Hostetler. I live at 201 North 34th Street. That's in the Seahome neighborhood. I am also on the Seahome Neighborhood Association board. I am simply, and I will be brief on commenting on the Iron Street permitting issue. I appreciate the council listening, particularly to Tom, and the York neighborhood has been excellent. The letter on May 25th to Mr. Sepler, and I hope you all have a chance to look at it. Very well detailed. It hits on all of the points. We in Seahome are just as concerned. This issue doesn't impact us immediately, but it will. And unless the permitting process in the executive branch works on it, there will be plenty of problems. Seahome's a historic district. Seahome has plenty of older homes, and as we all know, the realty industry is changing quickly, and there are interests that are going and just tearing it down. That helps them, of course, with the rental licensing issue, which will be upon them in, 10 days or so. And that there just needs to be great detail in looking at that. That was not done in the case of this. So, again, I appreciate your interest, and I hope you follow this. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandra Randall, Bob Burr, and Richard Mandeville.
Sandra Randall, 3700 Alabama Street, and I would like to make some comments on the jail. I didn't realize that a need for a new jail was even controversial. I thought that was pretty well established. I feel that the mood of the whole country is changing towards treatment rather than incarceration. And the only comment that I have against the jail is that it's big, that it's so large. I understand that you have a task force to study issues like who is in the jail and why they're there, and if they're really were other alternatives. I think the drug court and the mental health court are really progressive moves. I've been to the drug court just as a observer, and the judge does so much to help those people. And it seems to me that to have them out on the street and doing, working, being productive people is something that's really to work towards. And I think you can look at it as an economic issue as well as a humane issue. The big jail, to me, is a backwards step. And I think we are a progressive community. And I think people would get behind a smaller jail with some of that money going towards treatment. There's very little treatment here right now, especially with drugs and alcohol, as far as I know. And I guess I got started on this whole thing because I was talking to somebody or listening to the radio, and the judge, they were talking about immigration because I was involved in that at the time. And they built this huge jail, and the guy questioned him, and he said, "Why such a big jail? Immigration is going down." And the guy just said, "Oh, don't worry, we'll fill it." Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burr, Richard Manifold, and Joy Gilfillan.
I am Robert Burr, a.k.a. Bob Burr, at 1130 40th Street in Bellingham. And I'm taking time out tonight from the national campaign to elect Bernie Sanders to return to a local emphasis. And what I wanted to deal with tonight in front of this august body is why we had nobody run against you folks for city council. So I was shocked to learn about this at the same time that David Letterman was hanging up his shingle. So tonight I'm going to give you my top 10 list as to why there was no opposition in this election.
Buckle up.
Number 10, it costs too much. But that's only true of the mayor's race, particularly since we have signature substitutes. Number 9, it pays too little, but that's only true of you on the city council. Number 8, what's the city council? Number 7, what difference can one person make? Number 6, people would rather criticize than be part of the solution. Number 5, Jack Weiss is just too tough of an act to follow. Number 4, most of the bad decisions, like the port, have already been made. Number 3, and I promised I would single out Pinky Vargas. There were a considerable number of people who wanted Pinky, come January, to be the only person in city government who faced an election the last time they were elected, faced an opponent. So you are alone, Pinky. Number 2, it doesn't matter because the staff runs the city, not the mayor or the council. And number 1, perhaps begrudgingly, it's because you have all done a great job. And I am sure you will continue to do a great job and not be pressured by the county to make a bad decision on the jail. You're on the right track. Keep up with it. I've been in the existing hellhole. Nobody argues the need for a new jail. It's just whether we need that jail and how are we going to pay for it. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. I'm Richard Manow. I live here in Bellingham, Washington, and many of you know me. Back in 2003, I found out about a council. Nobody knew about it. Foster Rosa told me about it. It's called the Whatcom County Law and Justice Council. I began to investigate it, began to find out what its particulars and governance and so forth and what the law said. And I found that this council had a great deal of responsibility in this community, but nobody really talked about it. I signed up for it through the Bellingham City Council. You appointed me. Well, council members at that time appointed me, probably because nobody else wanted the job. But there was somebody else, but that person didn't get the job. I did. My first meeting was quite of an eye-opener. It was in November of 2003. I couldn't believe what I heard. I felt like I'd been transported from one part of the country to another. By the time the meeting got done, Sheriff Elfo asked me, he says, well, you feel like you're in another world or what? And I says, yeah, I just been transported somewhere else. It was heartbreaking. 2 weeks later, I start telling the leadership of the neighborhood association what I had heard. 40 minutes worth, I went on and on and on about it, giving them information. A lot of information that was given to me by the members of the Law and Justice Council. Stuff that most people would think would be privileged or hidden. No. Those individuals at one point finally stopped because my voice was going dry. And we started a series of discussions. We made some predictions right then and there in the early part of 2004. What is the possibility of a jail being built? It became the biggest question for all of us. We concluded in our discussions that at the best, it might get built by 2015. I'll say tonight, we'll be lucky if it's 2017. Many, many times over the years, I was learning things that you were not privileged to. Heroic things, as well as very sad things. Time and time again, I'm hearing people talk about how we're incarcerating people, putting people in jail. One of the most important things that the judges taught me and wanted me to say to you, the public, again and again, is that first of all, these individuals are adults. They have made their choice. They have chosen the way that they are going. They're very conscious and very aware of it. The other thing was talking to the people in the mental health community and asking them, what do I need to know? What do I need to learn? And again, I learned. Everything I heard you council members talk about today when it came to different programs like Spokane, every one of those programs Whatcom County is doing or has done at one time or another. And the reason why they're not doing it is because the funding is not there. And I'm going to say publicly that the 0.3% that's being proposed is not enough money. We do not have enough money for law and justice. I'm not a big fan of the idea of a big jail, as some people call it. I'm in favor of building a jail that can help these people get on with their lives. And that's what it comes down to. Thank you.
My name is Joy Gilfillan. I'm president of the Restorative Community Coalition, and I thank you all for taking a stance of inquiry and actually asking, I shouldn't even have said the word actually, just asking questions that are real, asking questions that the public needs to know and that every citizen needs to know in order to make decisions, and certainly everything that you all as leaders need to know. I'm deeply concerned, as you know, about spending $132.5 million on a jail facility that will cost us billions. The operating costs on that is huge. The amount of time that it will take to build that jail will not solve the current crisis. According to testimony, we have inhumane, unsafe conditions today, according to testimony by our own officials. Solving a problem 5 years from now and spending the next 5 months trying to argue to get it passed by the people is a deep, deep, deep disservice to the 400 plus people on average that live and work inside that jail. Today we have the crisis. Today we have inhumane conditions. Today people are being traumatized by that jail experience because many of those people did not choose necessarily to go to jail. They made other choices that got them there. Solving the mental health issue will not be solved by the jail. Solving the addiction issues will not be solved by a jail. Solving the homelessness, the poverty, the joblessness, and the suicide rates will not be solved by building a jail. We need to actually solve the problems first. If we can solve some of those problems first, using many of the solutions that have been proposed, I have been delivering, as a result of research by hundreds of people within the Restorative Community Coalition, many documents to the county council, to the planners, to the sheriff, and we delivered an entire binder to Kelly Linville a few months ago of research information and solutions and recommendations. It's interesting that not the county executive and virtually no one has come back to say, would you please really explain this to us? Many of the council members have spoken to us, both in the city and the county, but it's always in a one-on-one situation, so we can't actually deliver a true proposal. What we have delivered and what we are continuing to deliver are solutions. We want jobs. We've delivered a phase 1 action plan to the county council, and I believe to you guys, if you don't have it, I will forward that. It's got 9 steps that the governments can do to resolve problems. We have a second project that we are delivering, which is a restorative jobs type of project. That's phase 2. Phase 3 is, actually phase 2 has to do with recovery and working with nonprofits. This is a multi-pronged, multifaceted, multi-agended problem. It is the most complex problem in American history, I believe, and the pressure to solve it is here, and we can do it in Whatcom County. I believe that. Thank you.
Irene Morgan, Brooks Anderson, and Lisa McShane.
Good evening. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate being able to speak. I'm a resident of the county for 69 years. I've seen lots of changes. I've seen lots of transitions. I've seen lots of the same problems going on for the 30 years that I've poked my nose around in the nonprofit organizations and all the different places I have volunteered or worked. I was going to talk about something completely different this evening. Last Tuesday, I testified and at the county council meeting, and wondering why the $18.5 million has been designated for the sheriff's headquarters. That $18.5 million would go a long way to do some of the programs and alternatives that we know will work. They've worked other places, even in our own state. The different subject I am going to talk about tonight is we met with a young intern today. They are from one of the local colleges and needed some hours to fulfill their obligation. Spent an hour and a half with them. We imparted lots of information, lots of ideas, lots of our programs and ideas, visions that we have. And they were overwhelmed, of course, with all of the information that we've gathered over the 8 years since I started the coalition, the Restorative Community Coalition. And I could sense that there was something really going on with them. So I asked if they had hope. And they said, no. No, I don't. In fact, I don't. I have trouble. I struggle every day, wondering why I'm here and what else might go on. So we continued to speak with them and encourage them, and in the end, they were very excited to be able to work with us, to be able to, because we did give them hope. And they finally said, I only have hope now that I've been speaking with you, and I'm very excited about helping you and getting some of your visions and programs up and running and giving us more public exposure. So we ask that you consider the many questions that have been brought forward from the community about this proposed jail. And I'm done already. Darn. I urge you to vote no on the interlocal agreement and the jail as it's been proposed. And we're having a conference June 30th. Thank you.
Brooks Anderson, Lisa McShane.
My name is Brooks Anderson, and I live at 905 Wilson Avenue in Bellingham, Whatcom County. I always like to say I live in Whatcom County, knowing that Bellingham is part of that. I really, the last week, have come and gone, I should say, to the county council meeting, the planning commission meeting, to the committee meetings this afternoon, and now this evening. I really find that it's very hard to keep up. I don't know the information that happens, and by the, like now in this meeting, I had heard what happened this afternoon in the committee meeting, but a lot of folks who are here are speaking as though they didn't hear that conversation or that deliberation. So I think it's really important to be involved as a citizen and to participate, but I must say it's a very hard thing to keep up. So that just gives me more appreciation for how you keep up, even though you're on one council, I guess. But impressed today with the committee meeting and how you made decisions, or at least your voting reflected that you were going to make decisions. One, first about the quiet zones, about the train whistles. I really was pleased to hear you, and I don't know why you did, except for my letter, of course, but I don't know why you did come to the conclusion that it was not appropriate funding out of the transportation package to quiet the whistles of the trains. Are you eating the chocolate? Great. So that was one thing that I was really pleased to hear you speak about. The other piece that when you, 6 of you, spoke about when you spoke about the jail and you were debating about the jail, and I understand we're going to have more discussion about that this evening, but I was really impressed with, again, for whatever reasons and how you've come to your own individual decisions, that you did that you did not just collaboratively make a decision. Unlike my experience at the Planning Commission last week, while there was about, and I don't know what else influenced them, but there was about 50-50 testimony about people who felt that the UGAs and the population counts were inappropriate to go to the highest number. A lot of people advocated the low numbers. Somehow they came up with a recommendation to you for the highest population. Unconscionable to me that unless there was something that information that they got from somewhere else, that they didn't pay attention to what most of the people who were giving testimony had to say. So again, while as you did today, make your own decision about, no, that can't be, the quiet zones, I hope you make your own decisions about the population projections too. Thank you very much.
Lisa McShane.
Lisa McShane, 1451 Grant Street in Bellingham's historic York neighborhood. Thank you for the thoughtful discussion this afternoon. Once the dust settles, I encourage you to work with the County Council in whatever form you think is best to lead the community towards a good solution with reduced incarceration and a safe, affordable jail. The goal of a criminal justice system is a safe community. A jail is one tool that we need for a safe community. Very few get better in jail. Some get worse in jail. These past few weeks, I've noticed that we're booking a number of people into jail with just one charge, driving with a suspended license in the 3rd degree. Those are people who got traffic fines, didn't pay them, and the DOL revoked their license. So what kind of person doesn't pay their traffic fines? People who don't have money, usually. Putting them in jail only makes that problem much worse. King County has a diversion and relicensing program that in its first year cut 1,330 jail bed days and returned $2 for every dollar spent. So when I hear that the jail is overcrowded, I'm also mindful that some people are in our jail because they couldn't afford to pay their traffic fines. That's one example. But a program like that, one that improves lives and public safety, takes investment, continual investment. And the problem with the proposal before you is that it's just a jail. a jail that's very, very expensive and takes most of our resources for the next 30 years, resources that could otherwise go towards programs that make our communities safer. If we build a jail of $100 million plus a $20 million sheriff's office, then we lose our flexibility to fund treatment and diversion. We lose our flexibility to make our communities safer. Our budget history is that good programs get started, then funding gets cut and diverted into operating the jail. The 2008 behavioral health sales tax, some of that money goes into operating the jail. The 2004 sales tax to build an interim jail and a new jail, much was diverted into operating the jail. We need a new jail, but we cannot rubber stamp a jail that's this big, this expensive. When you vote no on this, it provides you and the County Council and the community with the opportunity to step up and lead on a plan that's a better fit for our community. One with a less expensive, smaller jail reserved for those who are dangerous, and with treatment and diversion and alternatives for some of the others. This may take a little time, but in the end it will be more affordable and will keep the community safer. We've got time to get this right. We cannot afford to get this wrong. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. Now we will go on to our committee reports, and the first committee is Public Works, Public Safety, and Terry Borneman's the chair.
Thank you, Gene. We had 5 items before the committee today. Wanted to say this morning, but it wasn't this morning for a change. Yeah, the first was an update on the city's fireboat. The fire department has contracted with Moose Boats of Petaluma, California for the construction of a new fireboat pursuant to the department's award of a 2013 Port Security Grant. The purpose of the update was to provide information to council on the construction, testing, acceptance, and delivery of the new fireboat. The boat's is coming along quite well, and we should have a dedication of that new fireboat on August 5th. And I look forward to seeing that. That was for information only. The second item was a discussion regarding changing the name of Indian Street to Billy Frank Jr. Street. This was a discussion to explore changing the name of to honor the memory of Billy Frank Jr. for his lifelong work as an environmental and treaty rights activist in our community and around the state. This is something that we brought up a few months ago, asking the council if we could, about exploring the possibility of this, which we have. I've talked with members from the university, with the mayor, with the fire department, with others about this. We had a discussion today, and the committee recommended asking staff to go forward with trying to, with the process to implement the name change. This would only be a start because there's a lot of process that will have to take place, but the committee did recommend that to the whole, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very much. The third item was a bid award for the Ohio Street Bike Lanes, project number ES 0491. The project consists of adding bike lanes to both sides of Ohio Street between Cornwall Avenue and Grant Street, including intersection improvements at Ellis, Franklin, and Grant Street. In addition, this project will add pavement markings for regional bike boulevards on Ellis, Grant, Illinois, Michigan, and Texas Street, as well as a climbing lane on Lincoln Street and Medore Avenue. The city received 2 bids, which were opened on June 4th, 2015. The lowest receptive and responsible bid was submitted by Colacochiel Brothers, Inc. in the sum of $419,313.10, including any applicable state tax. The engineer's estimate was $360,482.62. The committee recommended approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 7-0.
Okay, the next item was a bid award for the Squalicum Creek Reroute Phase 1 and 2, EV-0110 and EV-0116. The project will reroute Squalicum Creek from its existing course into approximately 5,100 linear feet of new stream channel in order to, or 5,100 linear feet of new stream channel in order to bypass Sunset Pond between Bug Lake and Iron Gate Road, including passing under the Interstate 5. Phase 1 is Bug Lake to James Street. Phase 2 is James Street to Iron Gate Road. Portions of the old channel will be filled in. Large woody debris, habitat boulders and stream bed aggregate, a flood control levee, and a fish barrier berm will be installed. The vicinity map was attached. The city received 5 bids, which were publicly opened on June 4th, 2015. The lowest responsive and responsible bid was submitted by Trimex Construction in the sum of $1,864,944.70, including any sales tax. The engineer's estimate was for $2,359,393.20. So it came in well under the estimate, which was great. The committee recommended approval, and I so move.
Second. Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries 7-0.
And the last item is listed under, was mistakenly placed under the consent agenda, but it was for bid award for North State Street and East Laurel Street pedestrian safety improvements, project number ES-0492. The project includes sidewalk installations, curb extensions, pedestrians, ADA ramps, crosswalks, lighting, and storm drainage improvements at the intersection of North State Street and East Laurel Street. The city received 2 bids, which were opened on June 4th, 2015. The lowest responsive and responsible bid was submitted by Larry Brown Construction in the sum of $519,789.65. The engineer's estimate was $505,186. The committee recommended its approval, and I so move.
Second. Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries 7-0.
End of committee report.
Thank you, Terry. We now go to Finance and Personnel. Pinky Vargas is the chair.
Thank you, Gene. We had 2 items in front of us today. The first one is an ordinance amending our 2015-16 budget with a credit. So we have to thank the Lummi Nation for that. The Lummi Indian Business Council held their annual Community Service Award event recently, and the City of Bellingham's Office of Emergency Management received a $5,000 award to be used towards enhancement of the community's Emergency Coordination Center. We will use the award for from the Lummi Nation to enhance network infrastructure capacity within the Whatcom Unified Emergency Coordination Center and add network-connected timekeeping hardware aimed at improving the common operating picture during events. Again, thank you, Lummi Nation, for that generous contribution. And committee unanimously recommended approval, and I so move.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 7-0.
Second item was an ordinance adding a new Section Bellingham Municipal Code to establish the position of warrant officer at the Bellingham Police Department. We did have a presentation from Deputy Chief David Dahl, who explained to us how the procedure has changed, and effective July 24th, state law will require law enforcement agencies that employ warrant officers to establish the warrant officer position by enacting an ordinance. Under state law, the ordinance must specify the number, qualifications, and authority of the warrant officers. Consistent with the new law, this ordinance will establish the position of warrant officer at the police department and specify their qualifications and authority. This was unanimously recommended by the committee, and I so move.
Second. Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Pinky. We'll now go to Lake Whatcom Reservoir Natural Resources Committee. Dan Hamill's the chair.
Thank you, Gene. We had one item today. That was a report from the June 8th, 2015 Lake Whatcom Policy Group meeting. I do want to highlight some of the communications that we had at that meeting. Staff discussed a strategy in a slight change in the homeowner retrofit program. The program is shifting from a first-come, first-serve program to one that actually reaches out to find and engage owners of parcels that have the potential to provide the largest contribution to phosphorus reduction. Some examples of these types of properties would be ones that abut creeks or are actually lakeside, and also ones that have 10,000 square feet or more of impervious surface or more than 5,000 square feet of lawn. The redesign program will be launched in 2016. A research project is underway concurrently that will inform the design of the new program and the communication strategies and outreach used in the program. And this research includes surveys and focus groups and includes gathering feedback from prior participants in the program. Results of the initial rounds of research will be available this summer, and 3 focus groups consisting of homeowners and community members will be convened to further explore what will motivate people to participate and what messages are useful. Communications plan also includes the Aquatic Invasive Species Inspection Program. So that season is underway at Bloedel Donovan Park. The inspectors are there, probably still tonight. And the program has employed a variety of outreach strategies. There was some discussion on how to reach out to Canadian citizens who either own property on the lake, and the city staff responded that mailings are sent out to those Canadian addresses of boat owners, and that the Canadians in general have been supportive of the AIS program. There was also some discussion regarding Airbnb and VRBO type vacation home rentals and how outreach could be performed to those properties that have a dock associated with them. The policy group and staff talked about some topics for upcoming meetings. July topics will include a review of the proposed program performance measures and a summary of findings from the research on the homeowner incentive program. That meeting will be July 13th at 2:30 p.m. City of Bellingham Fireplace Room, Municipal Court Building, 725 Halleck Street. End of committee.
Thank you, Dan. We'll now go to Parks and Recreation, and Roxanne Murphy's the chair.
Parks and Recreation had one item, and it was the Parks and Recreation Department Recreation Division update. So what that consisted of was learning more about the Recreation Division's work plan, and that includes everything from supporting youth baseball to hosting great events at the Woodstock Family Farm. And we also got a chance to hear about various things that the Parks Department will be doing and the City Council highly supports regarding really activating Maritime Heritage Park. So this was for information only. End of committee, end of report.
Thank you very much, Roxanne. We'll now go to Community Economic Development. Michael Lillquist is the chair.
Thanks, Gene. We had one item before us. It was an ordinance amending 2 titles in the Bellingham Municipal Code, Title 15 and 19, instituting exemptions for impact fees and instituting exemptions for utility system development charges for qualified low-income housing projects. This proposed ordinance authorizes the city to waive up to 80% of transportation, park, and school impact fees and utility system development charges for sewer and water hookups for qualified low-income housing projects. There's a memo which attached which described what a qualified program is. These aren't just any old housing. The housing that's built has to be guaranteed for people at a certain income level, and that guarantee is actually recorded with the county that goes with the property. If that property ever goes back into the regular market, then the property owner has to pay back the waiver that they received at the current dollars rather than the original dollars. There was more discussion of that this afternoon. In addition, the memo discussed the potential financial impacts, looking at the 195 low-income units that are currently in the city's action plan to be qualified for the first of all, the exemption is not automatic. One way to get into the queue for being qualified is to be part of the city's Affordable Housing Action Plan. It's also possible, if you're not on the action plan, to apply to the council. And if you meet the same criteria for affordability, you can then qualify for the 80% waiver. This afternoon, the committee unanimously recommended approval of this ordinance, and I so move.
Second. Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We now go to, thank you, Michael. We have committee of the whole, 7 items. The first item is presentation of the Fairhaven Parking Task Force final draft report and recommendations. At the direction of the City Council, the Fairhaven Parking Task Force convened in 2013 to develop and recommend an implementation strategy to address Fairhaven's current and future parking needs. Through regular public meetings, outreach, and public input, the task force has developed a phased approach to parking management strategies, which include education, wayfinding, additional bike facilities, low-cost street improvements, and enforced time-limited parking. Long-term strategies consider paid parking and exploring construction of off-street facilities. The full draft report can be found online. The committee recommends approval, and I so move. Motion been made and seconded. Michael.
I guess I just want to make a little comment that sometimes if you take a long time and follow the public process all the way to the end, even through a difficult issue like parking, you can arrive at really good solutions that are reasonable and well thought out across a variety of constituencies. I think it's kind of a lesson for the jail or any big project that we take on. This took quite a while to come to this point, but I think it's a really good end product.
I can tell you exactly how long it took. 22 years.
Okay, that ruins the
So you might want to back that off just a little bit there, buddy. Just a little reminder.
Task force started in 2012.
I understand. Okay, Ted, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just briefly, Ted Carlson, Public Works Department. I just wanted to make it clear that what staff is requesting as a council action is approval of the resolution.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor of the resolution will say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We will now go to the discussion of the proposed Whatcom County Jail, and I want to leave off where we didn't get to this afternoon, and that was the staff responding to Councilman Borneman's requests.
Okay, Peter Raffato, Legal Department. So we kind of took some of the discussion that occurred in the committee meeting, and we combined that, staff got together and combined that with what was already in the packet in terms of some core principles. And what I'd like to say about the core principles that we're talking about, really, that's an attempt to encapsulate all the previous questions posed. So I think a lot of respects, a lot of those challenges, the questions posed, are encapsulated both in what was provided in the packet, but in light of the discussion, I think Council kind of took further steps in defining what their, what the concerns of Council were. So I prepared a list of 6 points, and I put it in front of you, and I can put that up if Council so desires.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Okay. So as we go through these core principles, I can, add examples. I can answer questions specific to that sort of back and forth we had between staff and then the response by the county executive. But basically, in boiling it down, and I do acknowledge that when we put in the packet, and that was, I think, on page 142, 143. We said the city does not dispute the size or location of the jail. I guess I should have said city staff. I mean, among our discussions in staff with Chief Cook, with Brian Henshaw, myself, we do not dispute that. We should have said that that's really what we were talking about. But in putting it up here as one of the discussion points, it's really kind of a threshold question for the council, because a lot of the assumptions that go into the financing, which is really what we're talking about when we talk about the interlocal agreement, a lot of the assumptions are going to be based on the size and location of the jail. And before you start to get into that and start to nail that size and location down, in my opinion, it's very challenging to really work on the financing, both in terms, well, mainly with respect to capital. So in going through these main points, again, a question for the council: can the city accept the location of the jail as proposed by the county? Number two, can the city accept the size of the jail as proposed by the county? And after you get past those 2 points, then we started talking about what seemed to be some core principles, both from staff's perspective and what council was discussing earlier today, in terms of how to fashion that financing agreement. And number three, the first core principle, the idea that prevention and diversion programs need to be funded under the agreement and implemented with city representation. So this corresponds to what we had in the packet when we said that that funding the proposed sales tax, that's a public safety tax. And the idea is you have to think about that broadly and all the things that are being discussed as needing that revenue. The city is currently funding various types of prevention and diversion programs, and some of those have been existing for some time, and some of those have been expanded in the last year or two. And I anticipate that there's a desire to expand those further. So there's existing ones, and there's also the task force that the county has discussed. We know there will be a need for funding in that area. So that's really that first core principle that we're sort of recommending that the council look at as something to, assuming that the council wants to, go back to the county with some sort of idea about what direction to go from the city's perspective. Second core principle, this is taken directly from what we already had in the packet. Number 4 there, equitable contribution to the capital project and operation. So some things that come to mind there are, what do you look at? We've suggested in one of the memos that you really look at the historical bed use for the jail. The county proposal blended booking use with bed use. Skagit County focused solely on bed use, and although there may be discussion, my understanding is that the beds are what really drive the cost, and so that seems to be an equitable way to look at it. But it's broader than that, because you also want to look at operation. One of the things that wasn't discussed a lot in council committee today, and it's of serious concern to staff, is how do we define the formula for how per diems are going to be charged to the parties to the agreement? And then you want to look at how is the cost being allocated? What revenue is being taken off the top before you determine those per diem? And as an attorney, what you're looking for is a durability, something where the agreement is going to stand up over time, and all the parties know how things are going to be charged, how things are going to be calculated, because that saves all parties a lot of time and expense. When you're 5 years, 10 years down the road, you have something to go back to that's real clear in that regard. An equitable contribution can mean different things, but that's, and feel free, Mayor Kelly or Brian, if I leave anything out when I talk about some of these core principles. Yeah.
One of the issues is, do some of the existing funds, or Terry mentioned interest or contributions by non-participating entities, reduce the costs for all parties, or are they just reducing the cost for the county? So that was a question that we had about the lower, equitable contribution, because I think the county has now put together a prospectus that says this is how much it's going to cost us and this is how much it's going to cost you cities, all of us. And if there is other money that comes in does that just reduce the county's portion, or does it make everybody's costs lower? So that was the other part of the equitable contribution, to make sure, I would say that make sure that the revenues that come in are shared with everybody to make everyone's costs lower.
Continuing along the same lines, I mean, another example is the behavioral health tax money that goes into the jail. You know, looking at that and saying, okay, is that something that ends up getting incorporated into the per diem rate, so the cities are again essentially paying for that, or is that not the case? And then moving on to number 5, the, I guess, third core principle up there, operational funds and capital funds need to be separated. My opinion on that is that's important for transparency. It's a way so that you know that you're meeting that you're getting an equitable contribution to the capital project and operation. It could allow the parties to fashion something whereby, and this was in the packet, whereby the capital revenue source could go away when the capital is paid off. So you kind of separate those, and then it could lead to a situation where the cities may preserve, you know, some of that taxing authority under the statute to fund some of those prevention and diversion programs. And then the last core principle is, you know, there's a few sort of legality aspects of the agreement that I'd like to explore further with the county, but the one that strikes me the most is that the city must have continued access to the facility and programs. As it stands, the city is being asked to be a capital contributor to the facility, and the termination provision in the agreement says that at the time that the bonds are paid off, any party can terminate their participation in the agreement with 1 year's notice. So my concern is, 30 years down the road, having paid for a portion of the facility, it would seem to me that the county should not be able to say at that point, we're going to terminate the agreement and thereby terminate the city's access to the agreement. There's different ways to deal with that. You can put in a provision that says the cities have to come back together and with some guiding principles really work towards an alternative agreement. Skagit County dealt with it by saying that if it wants to terminate the agreement, then that tax that reverts back to a tax that's favorable to the city, so that yes, they can terminate the city's participation, but the city also walks away with an 85-15 percentage split on the revenue, so that if they're forced to not have access, at least they have a revenue source to look at some alternatives. And one clarification, Councilmember Lilliquist and I talked about that. Just to be clear, that the cities don't have access to a 0.2%. The cities under the statute are limited to a 0.1%. So I can ask, you know, I could try to answer any specific questions on anything that we've talked about over the course of the last couple of months.
First, Peter, I want to say thank you for suggesting these principles. I think they're really good ones. I actually might add a 7th core principle, which we've talked about, that any agreement should preserve the city's ability to meet its own public safety needs. I think that's just a clear way of saying much of what Peter was already saying, and I've heard the mayor say before, is that under the current proposal, it takes away all of our ability to, you know, achieve any additional funding for our own public safety, fire or police, for 30 years or longer, depending on how the agreement is written. And so I think that's a core principle, that we need to preserve our city's ability to meet our own public safety needs.
Jack?
Yeah, one other discussion point, I guess, that I'd like to throw on the list, at least for talking about, is to state that there should be an equitable or non-regressive source of funding that leaves the city with a reserve for a sales tax through the use of a property tax component in there. I know that's a little bit detailed, but at the same time, I think the source of funding to have 0.2% be strictly sales tax, I just really feel uncomfortable with the way that's being proposed, and I feel like a combination of a property tax, which is a more progressive type of tax, would be appropriate. But I'd like to have that on the talking points here.
Anybody else? Terry?
Well, I want to thank you for fleshing out a little bit tonight on this. You know, one of the reasons I wanted a fuller discussion from staff is we rely on staff and detailed information so that we can formulate the kind of questions that are necessary to get us to a fair and equitable interlocal agreement. Is I'm hoping out of tonight's stuff is that we can, or at some point in the near future, put together a list of those kind of concerns. You know, what is it, when you started going through about the equitable contributions? Okay, we can't, it's not enough to just ask questions of the county anymore. We're at a point where we need to be saying, this is what we want to see in an interlocal agreement. This is what we need to see. And to get to those specifics, this is where we need the information from staff to help lay those concerns out so we can put it in direct questions, that this is what we want to have our discussion on a different local agreement that works for us. And tonight, but it would have been so much easier if we had that ahead of time so we can read it through and we can come, you know, do you understand what I mean? And it's good to get some of this right now, but that's what I'm hoping we can get at as a council, to formulate those questions.
Yeah. Let me ask this question to the council. Since the Whatcom County Council last week voted 6-1, and if you read the article in the paper, there was only one council member that said he didn't want to send the message across the street that he was in favor of the interlocal agreement. That was Ken Mann. The other 6 voted forward. What kind of a bargaining chip do we have to send this back to the county council? We need to send it back to County Executive Laus and not the city, not the county council. Because I don't understand why they would send it over here with a 6-1 vote, other than being political. That's the only thing I can think of, and I don't want to think that. But what else is there when they voted 6-1 in favor of it?
Did you listen to any of the audio?
I watched the whole thing.
Yeah, and
it's still,
from what I picked up, there was a lot of questions from the county council. They did it to move it over here so we could move the discussion. Forward, for us to lay out, okay, now this is on the table. It's up to the city council now. It's your move on the board to lay out what is it we need to be able to move forward. That's the reason the county council, because otherwise, you know, they could have voted to put it on the
well, I understand that.
yeah,
They put it on the ballot.
At least that's my take on it, and I could be wrong. You know,
I know, it's...
I've been wrong before.
Jack?
Well, I think we have a lot of things of what we would like to see in an agreement. What I think, from what I heard this afternoon, what I think that we know for sure is that we don't like the current version of the agreement. So I guess maybe to further move things along, I would make a motion to not approve the version that has been presented to us for the interlocal agreement at this time.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? I'll be voting no. Go ahead. Any further discussion? All those yes, Terry, go
I
ahead.
just want to say, while making, you know, seconding this, I'm totally in favor of building a jail. I've worked in the criminal justice system, you know, a good part of my adult life. I know how important that is. I know we need to do that. But we do also have to have the right interlocal agreement and the right agreement and right programs moving forward. So it's not a rejection of the concept. It's, at this point, it's a rejection of this interlocal so that we can try to draft a better one.
Dan?
I also, too, want to make it clear that I definitely recognize that we need a new jail. I've been to the jail on a tour recently. I've been in the jail's courtroom with Prosecutor McEachran and Judge Urig watching the bail setting process. It's clear that we need a new jail, but the proposal that has been submitted to us isn't a good deal for the city, and it's not a good deal for Bellingham's taxpayers who who are being asked to accept or vote on a tax that's regressive, that's further regressive. Washington State, as Councilmember Lillquist pointed out earlier today, is the most regressive taxing state in the union. I feel that we need to go the other way. And I feel that the core principle number 3, the prevention and diversion programs, they are now separate from the proposal. They're not attached to it. And one other piece as it relates to item 2 is that the proposal came to us with 521 beds. Our counterparts on county council were very assertive in bringing forward prevention and diversion programs and also talking about alternatives to jail as well, like monitoring programs and so forth. But the number never went down. And so if we are indeed successful in our prevention and our diversion and our alternatives to jail, shouldn't the bed number go down? And it hasn't. So I can't support the interlocal.
Okay, Pinky.
I made some comments this afternoon at length about my thoughts around this agreement, but in brief, I just want to say that I am supportive of a jail, but I want us to be planning for our future, not for our past. And as the interlocal agreement stands right now, I will be voting no.
Roxanne?
I just want to say, I hope this won't create a distancing with the county, and I hope this won't create a distancing with all the people that want this jail right now. What we're asking for is time to do this the right way. And what I mean by the right way is that we can do proper community outreach so we can help people understand what they will hopefully vote in favor of, that we can help people understand the types of services and the diversions that we hope to create so we won't be asking for as much money, and the types of things that we can do in partnership with the county, with our fellow organizations to really improve these distancing problems that we have, that we push into a jail, but we need to work collaboratively to help solve.
Michael?
Well, I'd rather not have to vote no on this. I think as soon as this is done, I think we should return to talking to what we can say positively to the county. So after this vote, I would ask to be recognized again to continue talking about what positive message we can send to the county about what we would like to see in an agreement.
We want to do that tonight or in another session, because I'm not going to spend all night doing this. I mean, if we're going to vote no, then it's back in their lap. And let me ask Peter a question. What happens if they go forward without our signing on to the interlocal agreement? They can't they put it on the ballot?
Yes.
What happens to the distribution of the money if it passes?
The distribution, it's the 0.2%, 60% goes to the county, 40% then is shared by the cities on a per capita basis, which I get a little bit lost in this, but I think that means we're 70% of the 40% of the 0.2% is what the city will get. I'm sorry. That's just how the statute reads.
Keep the money.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Let me just say that irregardless of people thinking this will have an adverse effect, I've been on here a long time, and I know what happens when this, because it's happened on our side. We've sent things over there, and they've not done anything. I'm talking years ago, and it got sent back. So you better be prepared for some long evenings, or I don't know. I just think being the last jurisdiction not to sign on this is going to be something that I don't want to have anything to do with. Peter.
I just want to say, I know you have a pending motion here specifically on rejection of the interlocal, but what will really be helpful, I mean, the county has asked for this. I think we as staff need it is some real direction.
Well, let's vote and then we'll go on to there. Okay, all those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries 6-1. Okay, now, where do we go from here? I'd like to just ask, why in the world is number 1 on there as a talking point? They've already bought the property. Why is that even on there?
Well, I can tell you why I put it on there.
Okay, that's why I'm asking.
And the reason is because when you're negotiating, you want to narrow the issues. So if people are talking about location of the jail, it's nice to have some finality and put that issue behind us. If the issue's behind us, that's great. Then we don't talk about it anymore in terms of the negotiation.
Okay, Jack.
I guess I would argue that it should be on there, and the reason is that the new location of the jail is not very responsive to people. I mean, when I heard that 73% of the inmates in the jail are pretrial inmates. They have not been convicted of anything, and they will be required to go out to Ferndale. I'm looking at it from the point of view of somebody in the city of Bellingham, which is the majority of the population. That there is no bus service out there. There is no real easy way to get there for a low-income family that might want to go and visit somebody that is in the jail. When asked about questions of, how best will that happen, what was told to me was that it's all going to be done through a video link-up. And to me, I think it's not very compassionate. It's pretty inhumane to be charged with something that you're not convicted with, but you're not even allowed to see your family. You may not be allowed to see your attorney, face to face. A video doesn't cover all of the emotions and all of the, the nuances of communication whenever you're there face to face with somebody. And I feel that having a jail that is directly next to the courthouse where all of the proceedings are going to be will not only resolve that issue, but more importantly, will resolve a lot of the transportation costs that are, for the city of Bellingham, are going to be excessive. It is really an unnecessary cost and burden to the city of Bellingham. So I feel like it needs to be put on there. I said earlier this afternoon, if we could get all of these other things, I'd be the first one to go and say, okay, maybe we can go and negotiate that away. But right now, I think it should be on the table because it is an important point.
If we're going to start down that road, it's not going to be a brief discussion. Okay. Michael.
Thank you. I would like us to send something, if not these core talking points, and something very much like this, but I would like to actually flush out at least maybe principle number 4 on equitable contributions. I think we need to avoid double taxation. One of the things that I see happening is that the county would like to, in a certain sense, tell the city that you're responsible for all these inmates, and it has to do with felons. Well, felons are solely and only the county's responsibility, and the property owners of Bellingham already pay their taxes to the county, and the businesses of Bellingham already pay their sales tax. We already support the jail for keeping county felons as county residents. We're sort of almost being taxed again. So when it has to do with charging the city for use, it's really only for our misdemeanors, the non-felons. And that's not the 70% number, the 60% number. That's like the 10% number. So it is not fair and honest to say that the majority of the jail inmate burden is the cities. The majority of the burden is the counties. As county government, they take county residents' money, including Bellingham businesses and Bellingham property owners, to pay for that county responsibility. I don't want to be taxed twice for that. And that's one of the problems with this complicated agreement, is mixing together operating and capital cost, is that issue of double taxation, I'm afraid, may be in there. And I think that needs to be dealt with. I think that needs to be part of core principle number 4, no double taxation.
Terry?
Yeah, and number 5, the separation of capital and operation funds, I think is a really important issue, because when I look at this, one of the things that makes this difficult is we've actually got 3 separate main issues that we're looking at, and 3 separate, many times, funding issues. The first one is when we talk about diversion programs and treatment programs and stuff, that usually comes out of one separate pot, and we many times look at it different. Richard Manaville hit it the nail right on the head. The county over the years have had some great diversion programs. I've seen it come and go in the juvenile system, where we've reduced recidivism rate with great programs, and then the funding got pulled because the state wasn't covering it, and the programs go away and things go up. And in adult programs, we've had similar things. Times get tough. You cut what's the first thing to be cut? Those kinds of programs that would save you money in the long term. So you've got that as one separate issue, and one separate group of how do we fund this that's going to save money in the long run for us. And the second is building the jail. of what's needed and the cost of that and what's equitable in terms of the funding on it. And the third comes down to the operational cost. Are we going to be charged to pay per inmate and also pay for other operational costs twice? And I don't know how to exactly put that equitable part into what we need in the interlocal. I think that's something staff can probably do, but those are the issues that really interested me on those three. How do we want to see those incorporated in an interlocal to make it work?
Brian, you wanted to say something?
Brian Hinshaw, Finance Department. I think Michael Lillquist and Terry's comments are what we were trying to get here in the core principles. So a lot of the details will be determined upon what the principles are to go over to the county and are negotiated. So we can address that as staff in the agreement. We don't believe that it's addressed adequately currently. And so the details will follow with the policy decisions which you need to come up with first in these core principles, and then we can address those as we go forward. And it will depend on the funding mechanism, the taxes that are used, what we agree to up front. If there's a property tax levy and the funding, then we can address those in the formulas and protect the city and also our interest.
Gary.
So are you suggesting that we agree to these principles and that staff then take the principles over there and hammer out something to come back to us to see if, as opposed to running some of it by us first?
No.
I'm just trying to see. I want to make sure.
So
I'd like us all to be on the same page somewhat as we're going forward so we don't get tripped up.
Yeah. So part of the issue here is that we have a financing agreement proposed from the county. Right. And we didn't do this, which is what is the policy? What are the goals? What are the objectives? What are we buying? What are we going to get? Yeah. We haven't done that yet. So depending on how this works out with you and then to the county council, the interlocal agreement will follow that, and it'll certainly come back, and we can add those things to it. So again, it's the principles first, which is equitable, fairness, what that formula is going to look like, but it would certainly come back to you.
Peter.
And I actually think that, sorry, Peter. I actually think that if we can answer a couple of these questions, depending on what a majority of the council thinks, then we can start on a note of, is there something we can agree on? And I think I've been talking about this since last October, so I agree with Jean that, we're going to go through a rough patch here. And so I think that if we can be as clear as possible about what we're trying to achieve, I think that's a better way to start this than not being clear and just having it all up in the air again as far as these are kind of like the measuring sticks of how you measure a proposal being what you want it to be or what you don't want it to be. That's basically what these are.
Peter.
I think also we're trying to stay at a certain level that allows, a negotiation is a collaborative effort, and so you don't know what direction something will take. For example, Skagit County, for example, worked out using sales tax, something that had some equity aspects to it. So I guess I'm suggesting that you keep it at a certain level that allows for some back and forth, between staff within those core principles, because you just don't know what direction it's going to take, and there might be a solution in there somewhere that neither side is considered independently.
Yeah. Michael.
What I see here are two questions and 4 core principles. And my guess is if we went forward discussing the 4 core principles, the other 2 questions would fall out. It would be easier to answer those 2 questions after the discussion has been on the core principles. So I would rather we move forward with the core principles and have the questions sort of in the back of our minds. And I still would suggest that we need a core principle that we need to preserve the city's ability to meet its own public safety needs. I think that's been implicit in there. I'd like to make that explicit and then take those 5 core principles forward for discussion. And hopefully that will provide the sort of flexibility that Peter's talking about. These are the things we need at a conceptual level. The details, we're open to discussion on those.
Terry?
Yeah, I'm just going to throw this out for new council members that are concerned, will this create a tough patch? Just a couple years ago, county council decided they didn't like our EMS, the way the package was, and they decided to dissolve that, to call the interlocal agreement and to bring it to a conclusion, because we need to renegotiate it. It wasn't something that we wanted to do, but it was something that we worked and we are working through, and it's going to take us a while to continue work through. But just because the county decided they wanted to change this and forced us into that kind of situation didn't mean that all of our working relationships were going to crumble, because they didn't. You know, we've been working through and we're working closely on this. It's one of the processes of having 2 separate governments that need to work together. And we're going to have differences, and we work through it.
Thinking.
I know it's going to be uncomfortable, but I think it's an opportunity. But I also think that we have to give some clear direction to the county about what we're looking for instead of just passing back a no. So I don't know if we're going to be able to come to all of that this evening, or we're going to have another meeting. But
how about we go down, do the discussion points, see where people are setting on some of these, and see if we, as a starting point, just to.
That's fine. Number 1.
Pass.
Huh? Well, no, I mean, it's on the list. You want it off the list? You want to leave it on?
My opinion is we come back
speak
to
to
that
that?
Sure,
later.
go ahead.
I'll speak to actually number 1 and number 2. I feel like those 2 issues really have a lot more to do with number 3. And first of all, you figure out what type of diversion, what type of alternative programs will be created out of the task force, out of the city's negotiations with the county. How effective, I mean, then we can go and kind of ballpark how effective we think that those programs are going to be. That will go and drive 2 decisions. One, most importantly, is how many beds do we need right at the very beginning? And then what kind of maybe a modular approach of how, as what Jack Louse had talked about, future expansion. But also, if it's a small enough jail, then, this whole argument about, well, we need to go and have this 1-story, big box store type of facility out in Ferndale doesn't seem to make as much sense. And maybe we can have something that's a little bit more pragmatic next to the courthouse that we do have properties, the county has properties on both the south and the north side. To me, I think resolving core principle number 3 has a lot to do with number 1 and 2.
Terry?
Yeah, I kind of agree a lot on what Jack's saying. I don't agree with where the jail is located. Is it a deal breaker for me? No. They've already, let's face it, the properties, that's not going to probably change, even though I don't think that's the place it should be. I think it should have been in the city, close to the court systems and everything else, but those aren't deal breakers for me. On the size, I think, as we have these other discussions, if we can have discussions on funding, different funding mechanisms and how that's done, and diversions and others, then we can, maybe that will come around in terms of size. That's not the deal breakers with me, either one of those 2 right now. If you can build a bigger jail at a cheaper price and do these things.
I think that would be helpful if we heard from all the council members about that.
Well, I think having number 1 on there is ridiculous, to be honest with you. We're past that point, Jack. They've bought the property. They are going to build the jail there. I mean, if we're going to fight about that, we might as well quit now and go home and let them make the next move. Because if they see that across the street, that we don't accept where they're going to put the jail, what kind of, all I'm going on by, folks, is experience. Yes, Terry did mention EMS, but it's taken a lot of years for us to get it where we are now.
I know.
And we don't have time with this. We keep saying we want a jail. Well, we're not going to get one.
Interrupt just 1 minute. These were questions for us to ask. We wouldn't send those 2 questions over to the county.
Well, then why are we?
They're asking us.
I'm asking you.
I'm accepting it. That's just me.
That's that's what we'd like to know.
That's fine.
If that's the deal breaker or not the deal breaker.
Michael.
Well, I agree with what Kelly said. Those aren't questions we send across to begin a discussion. You don't begin a discussion on specifics. You begin them on the general guiding principles. So I think those questions 1 and 2, as Jack says, they'll be easier to answer. They'll answer themselves kind of automatically and naturally if we reach agreement on principles 3 through 6. So when it comes to the point, I think we should begin a discussion based on principles 3 through 6.
Let's do it then.
Well, I would move that we ask the administration to renew discussions with the county government using principles 3 through 6 to guide those
I
discussions.
thought you had a 7th one.
Well, I have a 7th one, but let's just do that first, and then I'll amend it.
Okay.
It would be helpful for me if I had a sense of where you are on how important these things are.
Okay. 3 through 3. Let me have a little drink of water. Roxanne and then Pinky.
I'll just say my deal breakers are simply the prevention and diversion and the sales tax versus property tax.
Pinky?
Thank you.
I have questions about both of the very first 2 questions, but they're not deal breakers for me either if we can find other ways to negotiate. But I would like the operational funds and the capital funds to be separated, and I'm not comfortable at this particular time financing the jail at the size that it is. I feel like we can find something that is more reasonable for our tax dollars.
Dan?
I just want to generally agree with Jack's point before about the core principle number 3 listed here. The drivers for that are the prevention and diversion programs and the alternatives to jail, and that would be a deciding factor in the size. As far as the location goes, I personally don't. I think there's buying a piece of property and then spending more than what the property was paid for to mitigate it. It doesn't seem like the best use of funds, and it's hard for me to ask taxpayers to sign off on what I consider a bad deal. And as far as the size goes, like I said, diversion, prevention, alternatives would be, if that number could go down as a result of a successful program. Also, I want to look at how we do the funding component for that, and tying it necessarily to a ballot measure that may or may not be successful might not be the best way to go. But I think it's important to look at future opportunities. So right now in Olympia, I believe it's House Bill 2263 is being debated, and it looks like it's enjoying wide bipartisan support. And part of that contains a provision for for counties to be able to assess an additional 0.1% for mental health and chemical dependency treatment options. So I think it's important to look for those future opportunities as well as what we currently have.
Michael?
I guess if I'm asked to rank them, I probably would rank 3 and 4 as higher than 5 and 6. 5 is common sense for clarity, and 6 is kind of almost legally necessary. If you pay for something, you should be able to use the something. So, but in terms of guiding principles, if the funding isn't fair and equitable, then it's not worthy accepting. If principle number 3 isn't just about justice, it's also a funding question. If you spend money on the wrong thing, if you spend it on a treatment of a symptom rather than a cure, then that's just not prudent. I'm not saying we can treat and divert and prevent away all crime, no. But if we can save ourselves tens of millions of dollars annually, we should do so.
Yeah. you wanted to know on strength on these. I think we need all 4 of these in any agreement that we have. You know, yes, I've got a special place regarding prevention and diversion and those kinds of programs, because that's the kind of thing that I've kind of built my life around. But these others, in terms of looking out for, you know, our fiduciary responsibility to our citizens, these other 3 are essential to have in any agreement with it. So I feel very strongly that these be negotiated into the interlocal agreement.
Jack?
I strongly agree with all 4 of the core principles. I also think that Michael's idea about you know, city preserving its safety needs is a good one, and I agree with Roxanne about the sales tax and property tax. So I feel like we should negotiate all points, and I think that they're all equally valid.
Okay, I prefer sales tax over property tax. That's just me. So are we going to vote on 3 through 6? Is that what we're doing now? Okay, have you already made the motion? And it's been seconded? Do you have that, Elizabeth? That's a good idea. Who's?
I'll second it.
Terry.
Just in case I haven't.
Terry got it. Terry seconded. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Passes 6-1. Okay. Now what?
Good job of guiding us through, Gene.
Michael.
Is there, I'm just going to throw it out. I move that we add a 5th now core principle that any agreement should preserve the city's ability to meet its own public safety needs.
I second it.
Okay, motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Okay. So, Jack.
And I guess I'll do mine. I'll make a motion to add that that the city, or that there will be an equitable and more non-regressive funding source through these programs.
Is there a second?
Can you repeat?
You explain it.
Well, maybe okay, I guess I wanted to try and keep detail out of it, but maybe I need to put the detail in it. But
go ahead.
The move that one of our core principles would be to have a equitable and more non-regressive funding source, such as that would provide a city reserve for the sales tax component, and to be used through a property tax provision.
Okay, motion been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Pinky.
I'm not sure I'm ready to just make a decision on that right now. I feel pretty strongly about these that are in front of us, and so just know that I'm not going to support it just because I don't feel like I'm ready to just say that outright.
Michael?
I'm of a similar mind. I understand why you're concerned about using regressive means, but you kind of almost contradict yourself when you say we want to preserve the city's ability to do what? A sales tax which is regressive? We can't avoid all regressivity, so I just don't want to get into that detail right now. The principle of equitable contribution might be enough.
Yeah. Can I explain what I'm doing here? Well, we have 0.2% that is being asked of us to go and approve. You know, the executive provided an email to us that stated what a property tax combined with a 1.1% would give to this entire project. I'm very supportive of that approach. By having 0.1%, it allows another 0.1% to be used for the cities to go and use for whatever public safety needs that they need. That's what I'm trying to say in this. You know, I didn't make it, I think, very clear, but that's what I'm trying to say in this. And you know, to me, it just seems like it's a better type of taxing situation. I mean, Michael, when you were talking about, you know, the regressiveness of taxes, I mean, the wealth tax that we have in the state is pretty much non-existent. We don't have an income tax. We don't have capital gains tax. We don't, you know, we have Tim Eyman that has gutted the property tax component.
He didn't do that alone. Everybody.
Well, I know. I know. Yeah, and the voters also did the vehicle tab fees, which means that somebody's got a Lexus is paying the same thing as, my beater. And it's not a fair system that we have in the state or in this county. And so, to me, it seems like having a wealth tax of a property tax to this end, it makes a lot of sense. And it's, to me, it's just an issue of fairness, and I really feel like, that's why I wanted to go and put this on the table.
Kelly, Mayor
Well,
Kelly.
as you know, that I've argued for that division the whole time. But I do think that if we're going to negotiate with the county, we might not want to be so specific
Correct.
unless the majority of everybody says that's the make it or break it thing. So obviously, I feel that way, but I also believe we need a new jail. And if we predetermine what everything is going to be, then we can't negotiate with the county either. And I think it's important that we can negotiate with the county.
Yeah.
If they are interested in doing that.
Yeah.
Well, not knowing the results of this particular motion on the table, if it fails, is that then not a point that you will ever even bring up as far as negotiations with the county?
They already have.
About property tax, yeah. I know that, but if the fact that we vote on this, then does that mean that you're not going to bring it up again? Okay.
For me, it's a matter of principle in supporting Councilman Weiss's motion. In Washington State, the lowest wage earners pay 17.3% of their total incomes in taxes, and the highest wage earners pay 2.9% of their income in taxes. So for me, it's just a matter of principle that we should not be further burdening our lower income citizens that we are sworn to protect and look out for their fiduciary well-being.
Okay, call for the question. I don't even know if I can do that, but I did it anyway. So, all those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion fails 5-2. Okay, Terry.
But I hope that even though this didn't pass, the message and the message is clear with staff that that's what we would like to see is a different, more equitable kind of tax on this.
Okay, thank you very much for a very robust discussion. Why don't we just continue right on so we can get done here? The next item was a discussion, it was a mid-year Plan Community Development Work Program. Rick Sepler came in today and talked about three divisions, the Long Range Planning Division, the Development Services Division, and the Community Economic Development Division. 70% of the time in the long range planning is being conducted for our comprehensive plan update. 60% of Development Services Division is land use and building permit review inspection, and Community and Economic Development is 45% housing. So they've got their work cut out for you. It was a great report, and I thank Rick for that. The next was a resolution of the City of Bellingham, Washington, adopting the 2016-2021 Transportation Improvement Program. The 6-year Transportation Improvement Program is adopted annually to plan and program funding toward capital improvements to the city's multimodal transportation network. State law RCW 35-77-010 requires cities to adopt the TIP before July 1st of each year. Staff presented the TIP to the Public Works Advisory Board, Transportation Commission on May 15th. This afternoon, the committee recommended approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded with the clarifications that, Ted, you want to name those before we vote?
Yeah, Ted Carlson, Public Works Department. There were a couple amendments to the TIP, including there was a math error in Project 1. We were going to make a change. I think that's fairly straightforward. That's the annual resurfacing. That was actually of current and previous budget, so not actually part of the 6-year TIP. In Project 19, that's James Street, extending it to the north, changing the funding source from unknown to private contribution. And in Project 21, that's the quiet zones, still unfunded, but changing the total project cost from $1.5 million to $5 million. That will include both the Fairhaven Quiet Zone and the waterfront quiet zone. And I believe that captured all the amendments.
Okay,
One more.
go ahead.
You were going to add the Greenway money to the Orchard Street.
Yes, excellent. Greenway money, clarification to put 1.5 million in previous budgets. Keep the 1.5 in the 6-year. That's for construction of the Bay to Baker Trail. The 1.5 million in previous budget would show that acquisition that council just approved.
Okay. Anybody want to reconsider Commercial Street Green?
No. Nice try. This will be your last time doing that, too, unless you want to come and to the microphone and do it. Well, I just screwed myself there, didn't I? Okay. All those in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries 7-0. You got that, Elizabeth? Okay. The next item is emergency ordinance adopt an interim zoning for the cultivation of medical marijuana for personal use and imposing a moratorium on the establishment of medical marijuana collective gardens and cooperatives. The state legislature recently passed and Governor Inslee has signed new legislation regarding medical marijuana. The city has adopted interim zoning regulations for medical marijuana that will expire on June 30th, 2015. 2 SSB 5052 requires that the Liquor Control and Cannabis Board draft rules by July 1st, 2016 that will implement the recent legislation. Staff recommends adopting a new emergency interim zoning for the cultivation of medical marijuana for personal use and imposing a moratorium on the establishment of medical marijuana collective gardens, cooperatives, while the Liquor Control Board finalizes its rulemaking this afternoon. Committee recommend approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We have the evening minutes of June 1st to pass.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Older new business? Jack.
Because the meeting ran pretty late this afternoon, I held off on bringing these items up, but I want to bring them up now. Last Monday, the council had a retreat. I brought forward three items to talk about at the retreat, and I wanted to bring them in public tonight. I guess, so the 3 issues had to do with banning smoking on city property, which would include parks and trails. The second was to establish licensing for cats in the Humane Society program that we have with them. And the third had to do with establishing a salary commission that would review the salaries of elected officials in the city. What I'd like to do is, I guess, maybe set this up in 3 different motions. So the first motion would be to move to assign to the Parks Committee the issue of no smoking on city property. So that's a motion.
Is there a second?
And then the Parks Committee can deal with the draft that I will present later.
Yeah, I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carries 7-0.
Second is to bring to the Committee of the Whole a draft of what a cat licensing program would look like.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? Terry?
Not going to vote for it.
Yeah. I think Dan seconded. I'm sorry, Elizabeth. Just yell it out. Don't. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-3. Do you need hands? Well, all those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? Got it? Okay. One more, Jack.
The third one is to bring forward to the, to establish, I'm sorry, let's back up. For the Salary Commission one, to direct the staff to come up with recommendations of what a salary commission would look like, and to ask that Mark Gardner, our policy analyst, work with the staff on this project.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Did you get the second? It was Michael.
I did.
Jack, I'm sorry. Michael. Any discussion? It was a tie, but tie goes to the elderly. Okay, all those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Jack. Anything else, Pinky?
On Friday, I went on a Women in Timber Day with our with all the people who work in the forestry industry, and I must say it is way more complex than I ever had any idea. And I just wanted to thank everyone, especially the Department of Natural Resources and everyone at the Deming Log Show who put that on, who work very hard in this industry, and thank them for an extraordinary day. There were a lot of elected officials there, and I think we all came out with our eyes wide open. So thank you for that.
Okay, any old or new business? Okay, we have one executive session item. It was potential litigation. Staff provide information on potential litigation matter. Direction given, no action taken. Now, while she's eating a candy bar, we're going to have the mayor's report.
Go ahead, Chief.
I'll start now.
Okay.
I have one appointment and one fun activity I did, so let's do the appointment first. Alina Feeney to the Lake Whatcom Watershed Advisory Board.
Move approval?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries 7-0.
So Saturday, I was invited to go to a luncheon out at Lummi, and I didn't really know what it was about. I mean, I knew Stomach was Saturday and Sunday, but I got out there, and it was a cast party for a play that was instigated by Daryl Hilaire called Sonny Six Killer Bought the Redskins. Anyway, so it's with all the actors and everything, and I was a little taken aback, I guess, because I wasn't sure what it was. But it was a very interesting, and there was a lot of insight into the motivation for the play and all of that. So I just wanted to say publicly that that was a good experience, and I appreciated being invited. Other than that, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. We'll now go to the consent agenda minus item 4.
Move approval?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries 7-0. You know what? Just for the heck of it, I think we should have Linda read the last final consideration of ordinances. I know, she's got it down already. I think it would just be appropriate to hear from you after this long night. Go home with a good thought in my head.
I told Elizabeth that in the beginning I actually practiced these because the lawyers always have such odd wording on these. So.
They're just odd.
All right. Agenda Bill 20643, an ordinance relating to the vacation of a portion of the alley between Samish Way and 37th Street, south of Consolidation Avenue, as shown in Attachment 1.
Move third and final.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Roll call.
Terry Borneman.
Aye.
Dan Hamel.
Aye.
Gene Knutson.
Aye.
Michael Lillquist.
Aye.
Roxanne Murphy.
Aye.
Pinky Vargas.
Aye.
Jack Weiss.
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0. Agenda Bill 20781, an ordinance of the City of Bellingham relating to Bellingham's comprehensive plan, amending the Samish Neighborhood Plan and Section 20.00.150 of the Bellingham Municipal Code to rezone Area 9 of the Samish neighborhood from commercial planned non-retail to commercial planned.
Move third and final?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Roll call.
Dan Hamel.
Aye.
Gene Knutson?
Aye.
Michael Lillquist?
Aye.
Roxanne Murphy?
Aye.
Pinky Vargas?
Aye.
Jack Weiss?
Aye.
Terry Borneman?
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0. Agenda Bill 20782, an ordinance of the City of Bellingham relating to Bellingham's comprehensive plan, amending the Samish Neighborhood Plan and Section 20.00.150 of the Bellingham Municipal Code to rezone 801 Samish Way in Area 4 of the Samish neighborhood from residential single to commercial planned, offices only allowed, and creating a new Area 10 in the Samish neighborhood.
Move third and final.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Discussion. Roll call.
Gene Knutson?
Yes.
Michael Lillquist?
Yes.
Roxanne Murphy?
Aye.
Pinky Vargas?
Aye.
Jack Weiss?
Aye.
Terry Borneman?
No.
Dan Hamel?
Aye.
Ordinance passes 6-1. Terry Borneman opposed. Agenda Bill 20812, an ordinance of the City of Bellingham's comprehensive plan and zoning, specifically amending the Samish neighborhood by creating a new subarea, Area 1, and amending Section 20.00.150 of the Bellingham Municipal Code to create a new subarea, Area 1A.
Move third and final.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
Michael Lillquist?
Yes.
Roxanne Murphy?
Aye.
Pinky Vargas?
Aye.
Jack Weiss?
Aye.
Terry Borneman?
Aye.
Dan Hamel?
Aye.
Gene Knutson?
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0.
Okay, before we go, I just want to respond. We did have a piece of paper on our desk. Mr. McDonald has come here many, many times, and he seems to get more and more agitated every time he comes. But as it's stated in here, Peter, you want to say anything? Or Kelly, you guys have dealt with this. Go ahead, Peter.
So it's been a little while, but I did, after the first couple of public comment periods, I did check in with the Humane Society on the concern raised. We're talking about the individual with the concern about the dogs, correct?
Yes.
I can double check, but there was nothing pending to look into, so there had been attempts to respond and nothing pending from the perspective of the Humane Society as far as something to look into. So that kind of ended my inquiry. I can look at it again if you'd like me
Well, no,
to.
I'm just, it's pretty well listed here. Jack.
Yeah, and talking with Laura Clark from the Humane Society, they have gone through extraordinary efforts to work with him in trying to resolve the issue, which has been resolved, and ask him repeatedly, what else do you want us to do? And they're not getting any direction from him. And it's an unfortunate situation.
Roxanne.
Just really quickly, one of the things that I talked about with the mayor's office is starting a positive pro-leash campaign. And I think that's something that we can deliver through different commercials and different kinds of outreach and things of that nature to encourage people to keep their dogs on leash through a positive mechanism.
Okay, the next meeting of the Bellingham City Council is July 6th. So everybody have a wonderful 4th of July, and the mayor's raising her hand. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, I did receive another letter from Joseph, and he is making another request now for bicycle patrol.
Well, one of the things I'd heard from some people is when they're walking their dogs, he starts yelling and screaming with the blowhorn, the dogs get agitated. So that's the only thing that I've heard. So anyway, I think it's been pretty well covered. Next meeting of the Bellingham City Council will be July 6, 2015. Meeting adjourned.